lot of construction workers out today for whatever reason. And with that in mind, what was going on today? I guess it's normal to hear in some places they're really strict when you bring drones into their country. For example, some airports will actually confiscate it just because of regulations and stuff. But I guess because of things like the war between Russia and Ukraine, are people more on edge? This one's kind of interesting. This one says, Russian man detained with drones, suspected of breaching sanctions. A 50-year-old Russian man has been detained in Arctic Norway with 2 drones and is suspected of flying the unmanned aerial vehicles somewhere in the country. Numerous drone sightings have been reported near Norwegian offshore oil and gas platforms in the recent weeks. The Russian citizen, who was not identified, was detained on Tuesday. Norwegian media reported that customs officers found 2 drones and several electronic storage devices in his luggage during a routine check at the Squirrels border crossing, the sole crossing point between NATO member Norway and Russia. Norway's Arctic border with Russia is 198 kilometers long. And as they say here, the sanctions were put in place ever since Russia went to war with Ukraine, and it says under Norwegian law, it is prohibited for aircraft operated by Russian companies or citizens to land on, take off from, or fly over Norwegian territory. Norway is not a member of the European Union but mirrors its moves. The man's defense lawyer, Jens Berhard Herstad, told Norwegian Daily Dagbladet that his client had acknowledged flying the drones but has declined to say what he was doing in Norway. Does that kind of make it suspicious? Because I would imagine for most people, if you're not hiding anything per se, you'll just say, I was on vacation, for example, just taking videos and photos. And it says, it is known that we have an intelligence threat against us which has been reinforced by what is happening in Europe. Anger Mel told NRK, there's a heightened security around key energy, internet, and power infrastructure following last month's underwater explosions that ruptured 2 natural gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea that were built to deliver Russian gas to Germany. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that turns out. Was it legitimately a concern, or is it just everyone's up on edge because of the war and all that? And then I was reading this where it's kind of disbelievable where this is actually a thing. People warned about it, but in Turkey, they apparently made it like what? A law of sort where people could go to jail for quote disinformation? This one says Turkey introduces jail terms for disinformation. Turkey's parliament has adopted a media law introducing jail terms for spreading disinformation. It also requires social networks and internet sites to hand over personal details of users. How is this even possible for them to contemplate this, considering what's happening around the world where so many people were wrong about various things all the time? It says Turkey's parliament on Thursday passed a law proposed by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that would make it possible to jail journalists and social media users for up to 3 years for spreading, quote, disinformation. The Council of Europe said the measure's vague definition of disinformation and accompanying threat of jail could have a chilling effect and increase self-censorship, not least in the view of upcoming elections in June 2023. And apparently the counter-argument is the area already has very little, I guess, freedom of the press compared to the rest of the world, but they're still insistent that it's needed, for example, like they say here, to crack down on misinformation and false accusations on social media, although they say here it's not meant to silence opposition. Based on what's happened in other parts of the world, whenever you come up with stuff like this, that's usually the case. It's used to silence people whose views that whoever's in charge doesn't agree with. I guess that's an example of, quote, misinformation. It makes you wonder, for example, remember that news recently where researchers were saying video games cause heart attacks and all that? I was just reading like this one. Apparently in Ontario, the hospitals are getting flooded because of too many kids are in the hospital. Like this one says, Ontario pediatric hospitals are under strain and some are transferring kids far from home. So like there, let's just say there's some expert that says, oh, it must be the, quote, video games that are making kids sick or something like that. That doesn't seem plausible in the overall picture. That's why you need a lot of people to discuss about it. But can you imagine they're saying, nope, you're not the, quote, expert, so you are gonna go to jail now for talking about this stuff. Like there, if I was just to have a conversation and trying to think of it critically, I would say people have been playing video games for years and years. I've never seen all these news stories popping up of young people just dying all of a sudden or flooding the hospitals like this for what? Mysterious reasons. So to all of a sudden link it to video games, it doesn't make sense in that regards. Like there, would you consider after, oh, I must be promoting, quote, misinformation, for example, because the expert says it's the video games. Like, that would be crazy.
Alright, see you guys later.